Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this May 16th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Still an active weather pattern for the Corn Belt for the next 2 weeks with numerous rainfall threats to monitor, but it's not the wettest pattern that I've ever seen for especially this time of year. Clearly not a wet pattern in the mid-south, but they will have a daily threat of widely scattered rains there for at least the next 10 days, but probably longer than that. Still big rains to fall in the southeast as tropical moisture almost continually floods into that area. Daily threat of rainfall somewhere in the hard red belt for the next week to probably 10 days should eventually lead to most of that area picking up decent and significant totals, and we are looking at a significant rainfall event for a big portion of the northern plains for tomorrow into Friday before they dry out. Temperature and rainfall forecast this morning, not a whole lot of differences versus what I presented yesterday. Temperature-wise, the only cool air of note is going to be for the very end of this week and into very early next week for the central and northern plains and northwestern portions of the Corn Belt. Otherwise, it is a decidedly warm pattern for the next 2 weeks. Rainfall forecast shows a fairly active weather pattern coming up for the next 2 weeks, but a lot of the areas seeing just near normal rainfall amounts means that, again, it is not the wettest pattern that one would ever see, especially for this time of year. QPF discussion this morning. I do not have any major disagreements versus what is shown. Obviously, one's eye is drawn to the big rains that are shown for the central, northern plains, and northwestern portions of the Corn Belt. There's some doubt in my mind about the type of rains that can be seen there. This is a forecast that is weighted pretty heavily towards the GFS and the GFS ensemble. That makes me a little bit wary, but overall, there's enough other model support that I'm not going to be having any big disagreement versus what is shown. Still big rains in eastern and southeastern portions of the nation due to a tropical moisture flow into that area. For the day 6 to 7 day time frame, rainfall shown on a widespread basis in the middle of the country, but it is going to be quite widely scattered in nature. So overall, we're going to be seeing rainfall in this period as having a lot less coverage than this map would probably illustrate, but at the same time could be a situation where some locally heavier rainfall totals than shown are possible. Temperatures yesterday finally saw the 90-degree heat come to an end across most of the Corn Belt, with 90-plus degree heat yesterday confined to mainly portions of the mid-south. 18-hour rainfall totals this morning. Did see a few spots in the eastern Corn Belt pick up some 1+ inch rainfall amounts, but that was very, very widely scattered in nature, as you can see by the radar estimated rainfall, that anyone that got over an inch of rainfall in the eastern Corn Belt had to be considered as quite lucky, with the vast majority of that area getting much lighter amounts or nothing at all. Some nice rains over the last 24 hours in portions of the hard red winter wheat belt, especially in southwestern sections of Oklahoma. Looking at the radar this morning, still some decent rains falling even early on this Wednesday in central portion of Oklahoma. Widely scattered rains also being seen across the extreme southeastern portions of the Corn Belt, portions of the mid-south, and into the southeast. With regards to the forecast, again, we do have a near-term situation where a nice and significant rainfall event is going to be seen for the central and northern plains and into far western, northwestern portions of the Corn Belt. That is all due to a fairly significant trough of low pressure that is going to be located in southwestern portions of the nation by the time we get to late in the day on Friday, which is when this map is valid for. You notice, although, that by the time we get to Sunday morning, that the trough is split into two pieces, the main energy moving back to the southwest and just a small piece of energy left at that time in western portions of the Corn Belt. That's a big reason why we are going to be seeing the bigger rains from that storm system impacting the central and northern plains and western Corn Belt, with rains really starting to die out as that system moves eastward for late in the weekend period. As far as 5-day rainfall totals are concerned, this is from the GFS ensemble, and again, significant, even locally heavier rains going to be seen for especially later on tomorrow through a portion of Saturday in the central and northern plains, western portions of the Corn Belt. Our moisture feed into southeastern portions of the nation still bringing those areas a lot of rain. Otherwise, for the rest of the nation's midsection, for the hard red winter wheat belt, for central portions of the Corn Belt, for the mid-south, certainly not going to be dry for the next 5 days. In some localized areas there, we'll see some nice rainfall amounts, but it is going to be the scattered nature of the rains in those areas which is going to be the limiting factor behind the actual amounts of rain that can be seen, again, for the central third of the Corn Belt into the southern plains and especially into the mid-south. Longer term, again, a situation where there are rainfall chances in the forecast, but again, they look to be quite widely scattered in nature. This is looking at surface features. It says on the top there as of 7 o'clock on May 23rd. That's mislabeled. This is actually midday on Thursday, May 24th. You can see that there are rains in the middle of the country from all of the models. From the European model, there's the GFS, Canadian operational model, European ensemble, all suggesting rain chances in the middle of the country, but you have to admit that all of it is quite widely scattered in nature, and I think that that's what we have to emphasize as far as the rainfall pattern is concerned, especially once we get by the bigger storm system for later on this week. That certainly rainfall chances in the forecast, probably starting again in the Corn Belt by Tuesday or as late as Wednesday of next week, with daily rainfall chances after that, and probably some daily rainfall chances right into the 11 to 15 day period, likely producing locally very, very good rains. But at the same time, the activity is so scattered in nature that it's hard to predict exactly how much of a good coverage rainfall event we're ever going to see during the time frames in question, excuse me. 15-day rainfall totals this morning, again, a lot like what we talked about yesterday. It is clearly not a wet pattern. All of the models in agreement that we are looking at extensive rains in the middle of the country for the next 2 weeks. My guess, though, is that while rainfall amounts may be as big as these maps would indicate, it is going to be a situation where, again, I think that the maps are overdoing the coverage of the rain that are going to be seen. So it is the scattered nature of the rainfall events coming up that is the biggest key with regards to the rainfall forecast. Again, a decent looking system for later on during this work week period, especially in the far western, northwestern Corn Belt, central and northern plains. But beyond that, it is very difficult at this point to really pick out significant rainfall systems that would be producing a widespread big rainfall event in any portion of the middle of the country. So plenty of rainfall chances coming up for the next 2 weeks, and that is the case really where any places located in the center of the country, the coverage of that rainfall is going to be the key. As far as temperatures are concerned, they're going to be looking at the 90-degree temperatures subsiding somewhat in the near term, and that is even for the Mid-South, where 90-plus degree heat has been so common as of late. Heat will be returning, though, to some areas for the end of this week. This is our high temperature forecast for Saturday, like yesterday, indicating that 90s will be returning on Saturday to southern portions of the Corn Belt, the Mid-South, and into the southern plains. Still indicating a big temperature contrast that day, though, that will be enhancing the rainfall chances. Look at the 50s that are going to be just to the northwest of the 90-plus degree heat that is seen for Saturday. Longer term, still a very warm forecast. As I mentioned earlier, the only real cool weather in the forecast for the next 2 weeks is going to be for especially May 19th through the 21st for the central and northern plains and western Corn Belt. By the 22nd, which is what these maps here are showing, extensive above normal temperatures already returning to big portions of the nation by that time, and those above normal temperatures will continue for the rest of the 2-week forecast. Internationally this morning, we are starting to see some rainfall moving into some of the safrinha corn areas of southern Brazil. Looking at 18-hour rainfall totals through 1 o'clock this morning shows that we are indeed starting to see some rainfall as expected moving into portions of Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul. Forecast largely the same. Your driest portion of the safrinha corn areas over the next 2 weeks will be in the north for eastern Mato Grosso, Goiás, nearby areas where rainfall amounts largely under a half inch. Much better rains to the south of there after today's rains and in Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul. An even better rainfall event there will be coming up for late Thursday night and into Friday night. Fairly extensive 1 to 2 inch rains in those areas. That'll be followed in those areas by about a week of dry weather before some additional rains fall for late in the 11 to 15 day period. I want to mention China this morning. You can see from the map on the left that there was some very significant rains, even locally heavy rains over the last 24 hours in a sizable portion of the northern winter wheat areas of China. That area will tend to see more limited rainfall during the next 10 days, but notice how some very big rains over the next 10 days for far southern winter wheat areas of the North China Plain. Some rains at time to time over the next 2 weeks for Manchurian corn and soybean areas, but it's not the wettest pattern that I've ever seen for that area during that time frame. Over in Europe, similar situation there. Not the wettest pattern that I've ever seen, but for winter grain areas of the former Soviet Union, near to perhaps above normal rainfall there for the next 2 weeks. In Europe, your better rains with respect to normal favoring Eastern Europe versus Western areas. In Canada, a little bit wetter forecast today for southeastern Saskatchewan and into Manitoba, where clearly that rainfall would be quite beneficial in those areas, likely some half to 1 inch rainfall amounts there. That would be for especially for tomorrow and into tomorrow night. Notice that other portion of the Canadian prairie is not doing nearly as well on rainfall, and once that rainfall that I've circled there ends by late tomorrow night, we are looking at completely dry weather across the Canadian prairies for the remainder of the 10-day forecast. Maybe some increase in rainfall again for the 11 to 15-day time frame, but even then the amount's not exceptionally heavy. Finally, this morning in Australia, no changes, significantly drier than normal weather pattern there for the next 2 weeks, and you can notice that for the next 10 days, big areas receiving no rain at all. That's what I have for this morning. Everyone have themselves a great day.